Hello and welcome to London Property. I'm your host Farnaz Fazaipour, and today we're doing our market update videos. And we're delighted to welcome back to the show David Mckee. Welcome back.
Good to see you.
David has had a long career in the top end of the property market. Briefly tell us about that and then we'll dive straight in.
I took over the running of the family business about 25 years ago. The business was started back in 1979 out of an apartment in Cadogan Square, and then we moved into premises on Walton Street, and I now work around the corner from where we're filming today in just off Gloucester Road, Cornwall Gardens. And we are predominantly sales-based. We do sales and acquisitions where we are wanted to by our clients. We'll also do rentals, but very much focusing on personal service for long-standing clients. But obviously also like to get lots of new clients if we can.
Yeah.
Very much an international-based client list from all over the world, whether the US, Europe, and a lot from Asia historically. But yeah, loving it still, and I've still got the same energy 25 years later. Or no, I've now been doing it for over 30 years. My first viewing was when I was 16 at 49 Pont Street. So yeah, got a long history with our friend Mary and Sophia.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all getting on a bit, I think.
Yep.
So, David, tell us what you think is going on in the market at the moment.
So the top end has been very much, along with actually, to be quite honest, following a trend throughout the market, even at lower levels. There's been a lot of stagnation in terms of people committing. Hence, the volumes are down possibly by as much as 40% against last year. But I think we can probably safely say that the actual interest in real estate, whether it be at the top or middle end of the market, is still very, very strong for London. The appetite is still there. But I think given the election, given the anticipation of the budget at the end of October, and the change in status for non-doms, a lot of people have been using that as an excuse to not actually transact. They're talking, they're out looking, there are quite a lot of viewings, but the actual volumes of transactions and seeing people committing is significantly down. But as I say, I think the outlook long term is quite good because the amount of interest generally about London and new people looking to transact here is still very positive. I think that overall, we might actually see a bit of a boost in 2025 in terms of volumes, because every time there's been a real lag in volume of transactions, as there has been in 24, historically the following year has seen a real pickup. And I think this lag is giving real opportunities, because some vendors are being very pragmatic about pricing or what they might accept. So they may not have adjusted their prices yet, but they're thinking of adjusting or have done. And so I do think from sort of the 3 million up mark, there are some very good opportunities out there between sort of Notting Hill and Belgravia, where volumes have been so weak this year. It's
interesting you should say that, because that happened straight after COVID.
We saw a huge boom in transactional volumes in 21-22. Yeah. We saw a huge boom in transactions after the banking crisis. And funnily enough, even after Brexit, which has shown that there's been a considerable, consistent drop in the overall volume of transactions post-Brexit, there was a real uptick in volume of transactions in the quarter immediately after Brexit, and then it waned, because I think it almost like people stopped.
It's sort of pent-up demand, isn't
yes.
it? And then people just have to get on with their lives.
And 2020, we saw 5 odd months where people were bordering like not allowed out of their front door. So all those transactions then combined with what would normally be the normal course of events, say at the beginning of 21, were all put together. So we saw this huge rise, which was still well below the sort of historic levels of 2013, 14, 15. But it was a big rise. But we are against 2023, 4 this year, 2022, 2020, we are down probably about 30 to 40% this year.
In transactions?
Yes, for going from Mayfair, St James's, through into W2, Notting Hill, Kensington, Chelsea, Belgravia, Knightsbridge. Yeah, and that's according to data provided through our friends at Lonrez and Landreg.
That could have a massive impact on the smaller agencies' actual ability to survive. If there's no transactions happening.
I think there is, but you can sense it because you can feel it with the bigger corporates putting more and more pressure on their negotiators. But that pressure is actually misplaced because you can't make somebody transact. They have to do their KPIs, their 50 calls a day. We as in the smaller brokerages will work. And that's our raison d'etre is to transact. We're there to do deals. We're there to guide clients. We're there to tell clients, if depending on which hat we're wearing, whether we're advising a buyer or seller, hold off. And hold off could be wait to come to the market to sell or wait to buy. And I think for a lot of buyers, I genuinely believe now is a good time to be out looking and in anticipation. If you haven't been looking for a while, start now looking to transact in the first quarter of last year, because there's an awful lot of properties that have been on the market for 6 months to a year and a half. And those properties, those owners, it's not a case that they're desperate, but they just get frustrated and they will transact at the levels that they probably wouldn't have thought of transacting at 12 months ago.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you are having conversations with people overseas. Now, with all the talk that's going on nationally about overseas buyers, what kind of requirements are you seeing? Is there a pattern between the reasons why people are looking from overseas at the UK? Are they in volatile places and they're thinking they got to get out? Is it a family decision? Is it a combination? What is it?
To be honest, I personally haven't seen one consistent theme between them. It could be, we're hearing that a lot of Americans are coming over because of the election result. I'm not convinced wholly that is the only reason, because at the end of the day, actually, whether or not we're approving of the election result or who's in power today or from January, the realities are that under Trump, the last time he was in power, everything, all the economics of the US were pretty positive and strong. So there's no reason why that wouldn't persist. Maybe some of the uber wealthy Democrats might want to leave, but really, are they going to be gunning? And how many is that in reality? But we are seeing Americans come to London. We are seeing, Asians and Europeans still coming in. And that could be asset diversification. It could be because London is just a great place to have a real estate. Some are buying because they are spending enough time in Europe. It warrants having a home here. I've recently been out with a family and have, and I reference that because we're talking last week, they're buying purely because their daughter's coming to university here. And do they have to buy? No. But it's for these people, they are all high or ultra high net worth individuals for whom buying something in real estate in London is it is asset diversification, and it's also a kudos thing. They like the idea I've got somewhere in London, and it's a safe haven for whatever happens with regards to non-doms and all of that. It is still safe here. The biggest issue for the non-doms is actually, and I think will stop some coming, is the inheritance tax element. I know you had a chat with somebody recently about that. That is actually the most negative thing, I think, in terms of the pull here. And the 4-year rule is probably might stop some people coming in to a degree. But ultimately, if you want to set up a new business in Europe, London, I believe, is almost surely going to be more attractive than anywhere else in Europe to come. Whether that's because it's just so much easier from the language point of view, the ease of living in London as a city, and also it's still pretty favourable tax-wise.
There was actually something really interesting about the overseas people who are potentially leaving the UK, either because, it came to a time that they would have left anyway, or they decided not to dig deeper because of what's going on. those are actually some of the buyers of real estate now, because they know it, they trust it, they've gone back home, but they want to make it. And when you were mentioning,
but the people who, those same people who are selling, they're frequently, you know, I had a French banker who had been in London for over 25 years, relocating because of these factors that what we are perceiving as negative factors. But guess what? It was a French lady who bought their flat. You know, so it's a lot of the purchases of the properties of those people who are leaving are being bought by
similar profile people,
international,
but also
high net worth individuals.
Going back to what you were saying about the people you were with last week, I had this scenario where it was actually also a French family whose kid was coming here to go to university, and they were finding it so difficult to rent that he said, "Well, I'll just buy."
Yes.
And then she'll use it while she's here, and then I'll take advantage of this rental market that is so difficult for me right now. So, you know, this is where, you know, people, as you say, people do aspire to own property in London. It is something that's on their bucket list.
Yes.
And I think, you know, if you have got a requirement for a kind of pied-à-terre sort of priced, mind you, pied-à-terre to different people means different things. So let's be really specific. If you are sort of sub 2 million and you're buying something for your children, then, you know, if that's a cash purchase, it's actually going to give a really good return going forward, because I think the scarcity in the market for rentals is just going to get worse. A,
that, and B, actually, as the wealth generation grows more and more, and there are more ultra high net worth individuals, they will still buy here. They're still going to buy, and actually the prime real estate market is going to become more and more contracted. And actually there will, the biggest concern, and you touched on it in terms of the number of agencies surviving, I think is you know, not necessarily relevant to most people in the outside, but within the marketplace of the agency world, you are going to see probably a contraction of the number of agents, because I think the volumes are going to go down, because I think a lot of these properties are going to get bought and they are not going to come back to the market for a generation or 2 generations, because they don't need to.
Yeah, because we've actually gotten, with all the changes that have happened, one of the main things that's happened is you've sort of got rid of those flippers.
Yes.
You know, because there's just no money in it anymore to flip. So that kind of pressure on the market from people taking advantage of it financially has kind of been stripped away.
Yeah, I mean, and the buying costs are that much higher. So, you know, you can't now buy and renovate and sell in 6 months and make a 30% profit.
Exactly.
Because
you paid that in the building works that have gone up 30%.
Well, the building works are that much higher, but you know, from the price point that we're transacting most of the time, people's stamp duty is sort of 17 to 20%. So that's an automatic cost that you can't. So people's thought processes again, and that also slows the market down. So these volumes are going to go down, and it will be interesting to see how in time they try and generate further revenues, because they are going to be collecting less from
just by the fact that people are not moving.
There's going to be that, but the overall London, the holding costs for real estate in the UK. It's front loaded. You've got high buying costs, but low holding costs over time. So for our friends from the US, for example, the annual holding costs are quite large, because they have to pay an annual tax on their real estate, but they don't pay any tax on purchase. I think it's very favourable to a government to actually be able to front load the tax by getting it on purchase. They get the money early. They don't have to have it drip fed to them. So I actually think, in a way, from a government point of view, it's better like this. But actually for buyers, they can actually say, right, all right, look, yeah, it's a lot of buying costs, but over a period of time, it's less. You know?
True. Anyways, it was really good to speak to you, and thank you for sharing your insights. We'll look forward to having you back on the show soon.
Thank you.